will be sharing a conversation about private collecting, private collections, and other insights into the art world. Okay, so a little bit more about Richard. Richard is the founder of Richard Ho Fine Art. Actually, not many people know he began collecting first, back in the 1980s. So the works that you see in the gallery is just a selection from his many years of collecting. And how did we begin the process of discussing about this show? It was actually through our collaboration last year for another private collection featuring Nati Utarit's works. Yeah, so that one, we actually traveled around Southeast Asia, first to Philippines, then to Jakarta, and then to us as the final third stop. Yeah, that was last year in January 2017 Art Week. And Patricia Chen is a well-known filmmaker. She works closely with other private collectors. She has an independent film series about private collections. So other than her filmmaking practice, she's also a very well-known writer. She's been writing for art, and she also wrote for us for this catalog. She did a very intense interview with Richard about his collection and him as a very publicly private person. Yes. So I'd like to thank Patricia Chen and Richard Ho for being here once again. Can you please give them a round of applause? Okay, so before I pass the mic to Pat, I'd like to go through the schedule for today. We'll have a conversation for about 45 minutes, and after which we'll open questions to the floor for about 15 to 20 minutes. Okay? And then please feel free to enjoy the cupcakes that we have prepared so far. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you everyone for making time. This week is a very, very tight week. So for you to actually carve time to be at Waterloo Street, that means you must be very interested in either his collection and him or in the art scene, because we were going to be discussing. So maybe I'll just give you a big picture of what we're going to be talking about. First, you know Richard as a person in public art. You see him at art fairs. He's always presenting works. He can be in Hong Kong today, New Delhi tomorrow, Taipei the next day, Bangkok, next week. So he sees a lot. So today I want to talk to him about how is it like going from the public into the private to collect his work, but then representing that back to the public. And how does he deal with how people perceive him as a collector, as a gallerist? So we'll first talk about that. Then we will actually be talking about some of the things that are happening in the last 3 years. In the last 3 years, the art scene, the art market have changed. And I will be asking him about some of his observations, but tying them back to things, observations that will impact his own decisions on how he collects. Because this show is to profile him as a collector. So maybe for some of you collectors, you may have something to hear that you have not heard before. Now lastly, I will also be discussing this very current topic about art scene in Singapore specifically. As you know that ArtStage cancelled that fair. He was supposed to be participating as well. And then, but at the same time, and at the same time when that was closed, poor market conditions and stagnating market was cited as reasons that the fair could not go on. But here is this man who has just opened an art space in Bangkok, maybe a couple months ago. We went to visit, and he's just opened another an art gallery at Gilman. So I'll be asking if we'll be checking out whether they're looking at the same compass, okay? And is it really economics, okay? And I'll just end with talking about his observations about certain scenes and certain practices that are prevalent in the Southeast Asian art world, at least, that he feels may not be obvious to everyone who is a consumer, but it's obvious to him as a person in the trade. Yeah? Shall we start?
Yes.
Okay. So, Richard, you're a gallerist. To many of us, you're a gallerist. And to us, when we see you, you're always at your booth, you're showing rather colorful art. That's a word I used. And I thought I was the only one who used colorful. But that day at the opening, everybody who saw the collection said, oh my gosh, is this the same person? Right? So can you actually talk about this thing about you in the public and the collection projecting you in the private, and how and this appearance of disconnect? What is happening there?
I don't think there's anything happening there. I think I'm just like that. So, like you said, a very public, private person. Well, in a very strange way, I am very public. I've always been very public all my life, but it ends at 6 o'clock. So that's work, and then I go home and shut everything off. So yeah, that's the part where probably only my friends will know, will see. Yeah. But as a gallerist, or a person who is dealing with art, it's what I enjoy, what I like. After all, I come from a fashion background, so it's very obvious. It's very normal to be very public. I've started in the fashion business when I was 17. So it just goes on.
So am I the only one who thinks that there's a disconnect between what you see in?
I think when people see that,
Yeah, explain to us.
But for me, it's a very natural thing for me because it has always been like that.
The paintings in
the
black.
difference, the total black and white, So I don't see it as a disconnect. And in a strange way, I'm also a very colorful, monochromatic person.
How can you be a colorful monochromatic person?
So I'm a bit animated in that sense in public, but then you see me in grays and blues and black, So there is it's very natural. You will never see me. I love colors, but you will never see me in colors.
Okay, let's talk about this hat you're wearing as a gallerist, and when you first decided to show your collection, the private collection in the public. Now, I was thinking when he asked me to see if I want to do a Q&A with him, I thought, that's quite interesting, because you see, as a gallerist, aren't you in a no-win situation? Like, for example, this is what went through my mind. If people were to see the collection and they saw, oh wow, this is really interesting works. Oh gosh, have you kept the best for yourself first? I mean, these are natural thoughts, right? Now, or if you don't show something that is so nice, that does not engage, then people might be thinking, oh, but Richard, are you serious? What is your taste like? So what actually, is there as a gallerist showing private, your collection in the public, is there an element of projection that you feel that there is a need to project or mediate a certain kind of an image? Or you do not regard that at all?
It has not even crossed my mind before. I guess I'm not conventional in that sense because I've never really been bothered with what people think. So, I basically have always done what I've done and do what I do. I'm not exactly conventional in that sense, but then I'm also not that normal. You can't please everybody, And I think that's the fun thing about art, because you can be yourself. You don't need to conform. You know, you can collect anything you want. You can be yourself. You know, and I think this is the well. When Aaron asked me whether I wanted to do this show, I was halfway hanging some words. So I didn't think about it, and I just said yes.
That's you have to get him to agree on things.
And yeah, that's very me, you know. I always end up like that. And then a few months later, I said, I was thinking, what have I gotten myself into? But then, you know, I didn't even think about how to approach it or anything like that. I just took whatever that I was looking at in my office, in my house, and I said, okay, we'll set these things down and get it done, you know. It has never crossed my mind in that sense, like what Patricia has asked, if it was, if I had a conscious idea or whether I would be worried about, you know,
How people
would react. But having said that, it was quite interesting on the opening night, because many people have come up to me and said, Richard, are you sure you're not a psychopath?
Why did they say that? Why did they say that?
It's so dark, you know. They say you're not dark at all, you know. I said, well, you know, I'm not dark, but you know, when you're an animated kind of character like I am, all over the place, and you meet all sorts of people. The last thing you want is to be the same person when you're at home. You know, you want to wind down, look at something, and chill, and listen to some music, read a book. You know, and not have, even no matter how beautiful it is, a bright, colorful thing. You know, to distort your I would call my cool down period. You know, yeah, I'm one of those people who can spend the weekend in my apartment and not come out.
So whatever that we're seeing in that space is you after 6 p.m.
Yes, you can say that, yeah.
Yeah?
And before 11 a.m.
Oh, okay. All right. You're not working yourself. Okay. How has the reception been? Other than people thinking that you're schizophrenic, but how has it been, you know?
You know, I was a bit worried because at the opening, I thought, oh gosh, I'm walking into this room naked, you know. It was quite nerve-wracking, but along the last few days, it's been quite interesting because different people have come up to me and somehow or other they have seen something in the show that they could relate to and they liked. So there was technically something for everybody, which I thought was you know, quite interesting.
Now let's move to also discuss about your vantage point, what you're seeing as you travel, and how that impacts the way you collect and buy work. Okay, you are everywhere. Whenever there is an art fair, an important art fair, a new art fair, you would be there, and you're the person who would go for an Art Central and not an Art Basel. You know, you are always going against the grain. So now, can you tell us some of the observations that you have seen, really important developments in the Asian art scene that you feel are noteworthy, that you have actually taken in as lessons, and it has affected the way you buy artworks and you acquire artworks, or the process of acquisition?
I think sometimes the more you see, the worse it gets, because you get confused, you know, and it's very hard to be focused. It's almost like you're in Toys R Us or you're in a candy store. So sometimes I would advise friends and collectors not to see so much, you know. But I think it's more important to read up, understand what is it that you actually like, live with, and enjoy. Because the bad thing about art fair is you have basically 5 seconds to decide. and 10 seconds later you might not like it anymore. So you don't have enough time to actually understand it, because these days the art fairs are like a social event. The pressure and the pressure to look good, to acquire, to be seen acquiring, is actually quite stressful. I even though I take part in art fairs, but it's really not the best place to buy art, honestly, because you just don't have enough time to understand what you're buying. As to Patricia saying going against the grain, it's not so much going against the grain. I think in whatever collecting category that you're collecting or interested in, the most important part of it is not so much about what you're buying, it's more about what you're trying to say, A simple example is there are so many shows these days of collectors showing their collection, and when you go in, you see the same artists, the same works, the same type of works. They're all very beautiful, stunning, important. They could be important works, but after leaving when you leave the premise, when you walk out of the door, you basically remember just the name of the artist. But an hour later, you can't even remember which collector you visited. So it's just like if you are engaging an interior designer to do your house. If you have people coming to your house and say, wow, this is a fantastic house, it's beautifully done, which designer did it for you? To me, that's basically a failure, because then it becomes the interior designer's house. It is not yours. You're just borrowing something, you're just there, and you probably don't even live the kind of lifestyle or understand what the designer has put in for you. And this is something that is, I noticed, very common in Asia. And hopefully
Having the same names.
Having the same names, having the same style, wearing the same clothes. And, it's almost like corporate America.
So your point is, don't buy from art fair so much, is it?
Well, unless you have a relationship with the galleries, or you really know what you want, then it might make it easier. If you don't know what you want and have no clue what you're looking at, it is very stressful. It is very stressful, and there's so many things to see, and you can get carried away. Collecting art is not exactly a cheap hobby or a cheap drug, and it's technically a legalized addiction. So
psychological condition.
Yeah, so it can be very tough.
So where do you buy your art? All these pieces?
I buy from other dealers.
Oh.
Yes.
How do you know what they have?
I'm quite a busybody. I love to go to the back rooms.
Oh, really? So you literally knock on the doors and say, can I go to your stock room?
I sometimes do. In fact, that's the best way to buy, because the galleries and the dealers will know exactly what they're selling. And I'm not saying this because I'm a gallerist, but there's also a fallback in case you think you might have made the wrong decision. Then we can at least have a discussion with the gallery to say, hey, I'm not so sure now. Do you think I could, And I think if you've developed a relationship with any gallery or any dealer, the advice that you can get, or sometimes the information that you can get, can save you a lot of money.
What about artists? Do you buy from artists directly?
I don't really buy from the artists directly, because if they're represented, I normally go straight to the dealers or the galleries, unless the artist is a free agent, or not, or a very young artist who has no representation. But normally I buy from the dealer or gallery.
I remember we were talking about developments in the art scene, and if you look at the past maybe 3 to 5 years especially, you see an increasing number of private gallery shows have been curated by curators. So this, curators to like for gallery shows. And I remember talking to you. I think we published part of that very long conversation. But I thought that I want to just bring that up again. The question to you at that time was that when you acquire work, do you read? When you acquire work, do you actually read what was being published as a buyer? And as a gallerist, do you work with a curator to curate your show?
It's two totally different.
Yeah, so that's right. So basically, maybe you talk about you as a gallerist first.
The gallery, our gallery actually very rarely work with curators. Very, very rarely. We might work with somebody who can write an essay, but very rarely the curator. Because from my experience in Southeast Asia, the setback with curators in the region is they only know a very specific country kind of thing. So if there's an Indonesian curator, they will only know Indonesian. If it's a Singaporean, it's only Singaporean. That, for me, is quite disturbing because Southeast Asia is a whole area with more than 700 million people, and we're all linked together, whether we like it or not. I have this great difficulties with working with singular country curators who cannot relate the works in the region in relation to the region. So it becomes a very small conversation when that happens. And coming back to as a collector, hanging their own work or curating their own show for the public, I think a lot of collectors are very passionate people. They, in many ways, they know more about what they're collecting than the curators in town.
You think so?
I think so. They
in what sense?
They don't look at it just from the narrative point of view. They also understand the hardship, the circumstances, the difficulties in creating the work and how it came about. Curators tend to just want to understand the narrative, the story. So it's actually very on the surface. I know many collectors who are so passionate that they actually understand the exact problem the artists face and why sometimes certain works are totally ignored by collectors, by curators, and half the time at the end, when they actually acquire these works, years later you look at it and say, wow, how did they miss it? How did the others miss it? So, yeah.
So why do private galleries continue, if that's the scenario and reality, why do private galleries continue to work with curators?
Well, number one, in Southeast Asia in general, or maybe even in the museum circuit, curators are king. They dictate. I remember in the early 2000s, you couldn't get any show done of any Indonesian artist without having the consent of an Indonesian curator.
Serious?
Yes. So if you wanted to do, say, one of those Jogja artists, you can only do so if you have a branded curator, It was similar in the Philippines.
Since when?
It started in the 2000s, and then so it was very difficult, and the curators would dictate who shows and who doesn't show, who gets to show and who doesn't show, and which gallery they get to go and show in. So at the end of the day, it becomes the door is being controlled by just a few curators. And it's similar in that sense with the biennales and the triennales, you know, the curators will only know the same group of artists, and that's why if you look at Southeast Asia or even to a certain extent Asian biennales and all that, it's the same artists. They go from country to country to country to country, you know. I've been asked many questions in that line by people. They like asking me, oh, but you know, this artist is not a museum artist, it's not a biennale artist. They're very commercial. And I said, what makes you think the biennale artist is not commercial? You know, because they go from biennale to biennale, they make the same stuff, they have no time to think, and they have no time to develop the practice. All they think about is, how do I get maximum Instagram, Facebook coverage with my enormous work, which I do not have to worry about cost because it's paid for, it's commissioned, and it can be destroyed after that, but I get the museum listing. So it is the same thing. It's just like how I say Malaysia and Singapore is the same. We are stuck back to back, but we can't see each other. You know, so the institution, so-called institutional artists and the so-called gallery artists, they are in the same boat in many ways. Yeah. So this is the problem. I think this is where what I see interesting now with a lot of private collectors everywhere in the world starting up museums, private collectors here showing their works, because this is a result of a very lopsided perspective from the curators and from the institutions.
So how does it impact your own collecting activity? I mean, having observed and know how these work?
Like I said, you know, as a collector or somebody who buys things, you know, I buy for my own pleasure. So I may know some of this information or I observe it, but it doesn't really affect how I buy what I buy. You know, I just basically buy what I like. Like I said, every piece has a little story. You know, it's like a jigsaw puzzle for me.
I remember we had this conversation during the Q&A, and the question was that I was looking at your works and I was asking you about what you got out of that work, remember? And for each of the painting you had a certain reading. And my conclusion was, Richard, what about the original context of the work? Artist intention. How relevant is artist intention as you acquire a work? Or is it totally about, is it 100% about what you read, disregarding what the artist had originally intended? So then, you gave a very interesting answer. And you gave an answer about context, the originality of context, and who creates these contexts, who created these narratives. Can you remember? Can you share with the audience?
Well, you know, some artists have a narrative and a story, some don't. Some are very good at articulating what they're trying to do, some basically has no clue. No, it's true, you know, but then they are really, really good writers.
Who are good writers?
Who can...
You mean artists?
No,
no, curators.
Curators. I don't even call them curators these days. I call them writers who can concoct an amazing story in relation to the work, which is pretty. You know, it's good for artists who cannot articulate their works. As far as I'm concerned, for my own collection or whatever I buy, you know, they have to live with me, those works. You know, they have to be my house. So it doesn't really bother me what the original context is. As long as the work has some form of relationship with me, you know, and that's it, really.
And I remember you made this comment about who actually wrote this context. I mean, that a lot of the times they were written on behalf of artists, whether it was originally intended or not. Remember, we had, yeah.
Yeah, there are many artists who I've come across who will just, you know, show the work and And when somebody asks him or her, and she will say, oh, I'm not sure, what do you think, And then that gets the conversation going, and the curator or writer will say, oh, maybe this looks like this and this, we should talk about this and this and this. And, well, most of the time the artist, yes, that was exactly what I was thinking of. And so that's how the writing starts, and that's how the narrative sometimes happens. Yeah.
So you don't put your weight on it that much.
Yeah, I think art is an emotional purchase. You need to look at it, and if you need to think about it for a day or two, most of the time you won't get it. You won't buy it. It's one of those things that you see it now, and and then you can't have your lunch. You cannot sit down. You keep going back and going back.
Okay. Now let's connect back to your original point about art fairs just now, right? We've had a very eventful, I would say, week last week. Art Stage pulled out about a week before. It was scheduled to open, but I'm just and there was Tang Tai that opened, and you were there. A few months ago, a few of us were at your Bangkok art space, and then just 2 or 3 days ago you opened, or was it 2 days ago you opened a new space in Gilman Barracks. Now, the reason that that was given for the closing of Art Stage was stagnating market conditions, stagnating market and poor market conditions. So my question is, what are you reading from the same compass? What is it that he's seeing that you're not seeing, and what is it that you're seeing and he's not seeing? What are you seeing?
I'm not seeing anything. I think I might be crazy. Stagnating market.
No, what made you open the gallery, the art space in Bangkok? Why open another gallery in Singapore?
Well, it's how do I put it in a very simple term? I think, of course, number one, I'm a bit crazy because everything is black. Number two is, I think, we never really left Singapore. We had a space here for 5 years, and then the landlord took the space back. So we ended up showing works to clients at the Freeport, and there was always an intention to reopen the physical space here, but it's just that the negotiations took almost 3 years.
For Gilman?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, and meanwhile I ended up doing other things, so it went on and on and on and on. In terms of mentioning stagnation and low collector, whatever, I think every country is facing the same thing. There are too many art fairs, there are too many art, there's too many everything. So I guess if you are, well, we're not a fashionable gallery, so we don't follow trends, we don't go with the normal flow. We are slightly different. There is a market for everything if you know how to reach it, and if you are really pure in what you're trying to do. To say that the market in Singapore is stagnant, I don't really believe so. I don't see, I still see a lot of people buying art and a lot of people buying very big ticket items here.
As in what? Watch, cars?
No, as in art.
Oh, art. You're talking about art. Okay, as in high value.
Yeah, people still buy. And there's also a new group of very young collectors, or not young, but even new collectors who are buying. But of course, they are entering the collecting hobby at its very beginning stage. So you don't expect them to be buying a 5-digit kind of work, So and the young collector art scene and the young artist art scene, I find it growing in the last 2-3 years quite organically, and there's quite a lot of people trying to do something. So to say that it's stagnant, it's not. It's just that maybe in terms of numbers,
it's not as high as it
because you know we don't. This is Southeast Asia. The works don't start at $50,000. The work starts at 1,000. So of course the numbers are smaller, and we don't have tax incentive like in the West. You know, when you can buy works, donate to a museum, donate it, and get the tax rebates and everything. We don't have that here. So you cannot expect a high value kind of ecosystem in that sense at this point. You know, it's only been, especially in Singapore, it's only been really, really active in the last 10 years. So it takes time.
So you don't see a stagnating market condition in that sense, even though you see somewhat a slow growing market,
Yes.
but it's slow and steady.
I think now you get a slow and steady, you know, unlike a few years ago where it was like rush, buy, you know. I mean, to make fun out of it, you know, I'm just wondering how many storage unit at one point, you know, where they will have to figure out what to do with all the stuff that they bought.
Mostly investors, I would say,
Yes.
a few years ago.
Yeah.
Right now,
I think now people are not so into it. I think people are beginning to look at it from an art point, from a proper collecting point.
I'm curious as to how your Taipei experience went. You showed at Tangdai. Now, how was the interactions? How was the scene like? How was the interaction with collectors like? How are the collectors as opposed to, or artists or art scene, as opposed to what you have observed here in Singapore?
It's very different because Taipei is a much more mature kind of collector market, you know. There are collectors who collect contemporary, but they're unlike here in Singapore or in Southeast Asia, they are not as adventurous.
The Taipei.
Yes, so they are more conservative, and they need to do their research. They need to know you better. For them, it's more of a relationship kind of thing. So they need to get to know you on a longer period first before they have confidence to buy.
So when you say they're not adventurous, what do they buy?
It's not that, I mean, they can be quite advanced, but they're not as adventurous in the sense that they need time to understand new things, works that they're not familiar with.
So did you do well in Taipei?
Unfortunately, we didn't do that well, but it was expected. I went with very open eyes. It was the first edition of the fair. The fair is beautiful. Quality was quite equal everywhere. But we have no one, we don't know anyone in Taiwan. Yeah, so it wasn't great, but we had quite a number of museum inquiries, and I mean, we did sell something, but it was not from the booth, it was from our iPad.
Oh, I see. So that ties back to your point about relationship.
Yes. I think
So if you don't have the relationship, it's very difficult.
It is very, very difficult.
But if it's in Singapore and Southeast Asia, it's easier.
It's slightly easier. It's slightly easier.
People are more open.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. Now let's talk about Bangkok. I mean, I'm curious about Bangkok because Bangkok, this is the first year it's got 2 biennials, right? 3 biennials, yes, 3 biennials. And suddenly there was this, you know, there's so much art, it's such a short time. And then you, of course, you know, contemporary productions have been happening, but then, and you've just opened this art space. What are you observing in Bangkok? And Chiang Mai?
Bangkok is an interesting place because the market is even more fragmented. It is like a mini Southeast Asia, you know. So you have Chiang Mai, you have Bangkok, and then you have Silapakorn, and you have, you know, different schools, and then you have galleries that a group of galleries here and a group of galleries here, and they don't mingle, they don't mix, and then the collectors that doesn't cross. Yeah, so it is very interesting. And then you also have a lot of foreigners who have spaces that do not cater to the locals, and the locals who doesn't cater to the foreigners. So yeah, it's very
quite fragmented.
It's very, very fragmented.
But yeah, the productions, artist productions has actually
It
increased.
increased a
getting,
lot. Yeah, it's getting very, very interesting.
yeah.
It's getting very interesting.
Yesterday I was at a talk with Alan Survey, Alan Lowe and Jen Akuza, and there was a question from the floor asking what does it take for Singapore as an art scene to develop further, right? And Alan actually said chaos. In Singapore, that everything is just too orderly and chaos. So, what are your thoughts? And also because of the love of order and structure, it actually affects artistic production.
In a strange way, yes, but I think chaos might not work with us here because we are a little bit more polite, you know. I think for Singapore, I think the most important thing is I think Singapore needs to understand what she wants, you know.
What do you think Singapore wants?
Well, it's always been international, but international from whose perspective? Because, you know, the art world has always been transatlantic, London, New York, Paris. And the art history is written from a Western perspective. So international from whose perspective? Because we are very different here. You know, even I was telling a fan director in New York a couple of years ago, she was telling, because I asked, how come there are not many Asian-owned galleries in the fairs? And her reply was, oh, we have who and who and who. I said, yes, but they are owned by Europeans. They're not Asian-owned. And of course, it became slightly defensive. She said, yeah, but we don't understand the aesthetics, you know. And so I said, of course you won't understand because, you know, you open the book from this side and Asians open the book from the other side. So how are you going to meet in the middle? You need to meet in the middle, right? So hence that, so whose perspective are we looking at? And as the region becomes more and more important and we have more and more people going into collecting or art making and more museums are coming up, you know, we need to relook at this and maybe in a strange way also rewrite our own art history.
Which is beginning to happen.
It is beginning to happen, but you know the problem is it's beginning to happen from the West.
That's true. There's a recent Cornell initiative that was led by Cornell, supported by NACA and Asia Art Archive that are looking at modernities in parallel, but it's still Western-led.
It's not. In fact, the strangest of all strange things is the Asians are now bringing in Western shows with no relation to Asia, you know, and
what about artist productions? I mean, I keep tying back to Singapore. I sort of allow you to talk about the region, but to tie it back to Singapore because so much actually happened in the last week. And you're talking about Western history and Western narratives. In your working, in you working with artists, do you see artists continue to have that inclination and preference for Western discourse because of biennales, museums, and what are you seeing in terms of artist production?
There are a certain group of artists who will produce works specifically from a Western point of view.
Why?
I think it's the need to be the need to be part of this institutional kind of narrative, and also a lot of the curators, so-called curators, who are here are foreigners. So they are, again, in a strange way, curating shows with that kind of topic, and being in Asia sometimes is very strange, because if you have a fantastic Asian curator and a mediocre Western curator, the best will always go to the Western curator. So is that need to be validated by an outsider. So I think it's time to write it from the inside and not from the outside.
Are you seeing more artists like this?
There's always been, but for a period there were loads of them, even more. But then again, this is not the fault of the curators in that sense, because, like I said, the local curators in Southeast Asia is very country-centric, so they cannot relate to the entire region, whereas a lot of the foreign curators can. So of course they will do what comes to mind first, which is the social politics, social issues, and everything. But again, that's from one perspective. I'm quite horrible in that sense, because I always ask them, most of us have 2 handphones, we have a car, we travel, do we still look like we're in a war zone? Why is it always poverty and war zone, or Kerbau pictures, in the village, that they love this kind of work, when they're curating, but that's from their perspective. So no one is curating from this side of the wall.
I just have one last question. I mean, you've actually generously talked about quite different areas, and so I will leave some time for the audience to actually talk to you directly or ask questions. But I just have one last question. Now, we've been through quite a lot in the last 1 week. If you were to have a government official here, Singapore government official, what would you tell him about what we have observed about the lessons that we should have learned, we are learning from this particular episode? What would you say, look here, what are you seeing? What would you tell him?
Chill out.
As in, don't intervene.
Yeah, don't intervene, don't put your hands in it, let it get on by itself.
What do you think they're doing?
Well, it's a what you would call a government side of it, so it's got really nothing to do with the art.
Like what?
What do you call it? KPI, whatever, tourism,
Yeah.
So it's got nothing to do with.
So, if the government official were to be here, so he would be, for example, I'm the government official. So, are you trying to tell me, let's not fix SE, let's not have SE focus? Is that what you're trying to say, or not to even save the galleries whose artworks are stuck here, and not to have any kind of emergency save? Just leave them alone.
Yeah,
is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would say that. Let it. This is an opportunity. I say, because it's a disaster. It's been a horrible week. And I think it's wonderful.
Why do you think it's wonderful?
Because when everything collapses, something will come up. And let it get on by itself. Then it can grow organically. It's always been top down. When you have top down, you can't get anywhere. And what is interesting now is you see Indonesia, Philippines, even Malaysia, is coming from the bottom up. And if Singapore doesn't think in a different way, it won't be the hub of Southeast Asia.
Very good. With that, I shall end this talk, and let's.
about why you bought what you bought and what you have collected. You bought, if I understood you correctly, because they appeal to your eye. And that's the only reason why you buy, because it resonates with you emotionally. And that is quite rare among some collectors, I think. And I think that's born out of your personal confidence in your own self, in your own taste. And I also appreciate your pointed remark, perhaps not to other people who are listening, that you made the remark that some of us collectors buy because they fit it with our wallpaper or fit with our interior design. Perhaps it will take time for us to grow with confidence like you had, to dare to buy what turns us on.
And show.
And show.
After that.
I just have two questions. One personal. What made you decide to switch from fashion to art 20 years ago? The second question, as a gallerist, what criteria do you use to select an artist or artists to sell and to be shown in your gallery?
I will answer the second one first. That's easier.
It's also in the catalog. Yeah, but it's okay, please.
I think the most important is the work ethics of the artist. Because it's a young thing in Asia, in Southeast Asia. I think one of the problems we face in Southeast Asia is work ethics, especially with artists. So they have no understanding of what working professionally is about. So I choose the artist based on the work ethics, the impression I get from them when I talk to them, spend time with them, and observe how they actually work. The first question is why I switch. It's a very strange thing. Well, fashion is something that you need a lot of people. You need a factory, you need the whole thing, and I did it for a long time. In fact, one of the companies in Singapore that supported me in production was China Silk House and BB and Baba. I think those who are old enough will remember. Yeah.
Because you were in contract manufacturing,
Yes,
weren't you?
Yeah, and I also had my own brand in London and all that. But it's a job that in those days, before the internet days, you basically work 4 months a year, and that 4 months you're constantly drunk and crazy, and then for the 8 months you basically have no clue what you're doing because you're recovering.
Sounds like fun to me. Sounds like our art week.
Yeah. But it's actually very similar because we stand in the fairs, we stand in the trade shows. It's quite similar, but it's just something that needed too many people, and I got a bit tired after doing it for almost 10 years. So I switched.
Questions? Selena?
Observations and questions. Because I agree with you, talking about kind of rewriting art history from the perspective of Asia or Southeast Asia, right? But I think one of the reasons that today the way your criticism towards curators or art historians is totally valid. But then if our curators and our art historians, they were all trained in the West, according to the Western historical canon, then it's difficult to build up a kind of perspective. Particularly when we talk about curators, it's the knowledge, but then there's a kind of skill set to come up with an exhibition. So if we kind of the curators, but then also an institution, how professional that entity or the individual is also according to how professional the standard of the
Education.
skill set, the kind of expertise. And all these measurements very often is also according to the Western standard. So if we don't have an art school or a curatorial program that will train the younger generation to become professional curators or future museum conservators, Western measures. So I see that in Asia so far, in the university level, there's not really a popular tutorial program going on the master's level or PhD level. So you still need to go to the West and scholarship.
Yes.
So we still have to wait for the first cohort. So you still need to go through this process to learn from the West. And the other thing is that this kind of initiative from the West to rewrite history is not just happening about Asia, but it's about the South. It's the rewriting of our history in regard to, for example, women artists, for example, colored artists. So it's kind of a natural development for them to also look at so-called non-mainstream regions, right? And so last week in Danhai, we call it an regional affair. The quality is international, but it positions itself as a regional affair. We look at it as a regional affair. We look at Southeast Asia contemporary art. We see it as a regional scene. So, like, until which point should we stop using the word regional? So if we look at Asia, and Asia is getting like so much more important and playing an important role internationally. And then also, I always think that because now Asian collectors, their purchasing power is kind of growing up so fast, much stronger. The Western dealers, they look at Asia as kind of money-making machine, rather than they kind of proper respect to art production or art making happening here, right? So even if the institutions that come to Asia, they're still looking for. I think the first thing they need is either looking at modern masters from Asia, or they're looking at patrons or the potential patrons, trustees that they need to bring into their institutions, right? So the attention is kind of misplaced. So that's another thing that we need to look into. And one thing I also want to ask is that it's not related to this kind of more contextual historical problem, but so we're kind of naturally skeptical when a collector becomes a dealer. And what about the case when a dealer is also an undercover collector? So I didn't know that you have such a beautiful collection. So it was a very nice discovery here. So do most dealers collect? And if they do, and if they resell, they have their own secret channel to resell. Does it pose some problematics? Because we would judge a collector if a collector resell even through their secret channels. But a dealer, this kind of channels is more kind of available to them, and they can do it like totally invisible. But do we apply the same problematics to dealer collectors in this case?
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of dealers actually collect, and many dealers actually have very different collection from what they sell. And in today's day and age, I think the reselling part, I think collectors do more reselling than the dealers. It's quite funny because the dealers always get a bad rap if they collect and if they resell. But there's so many collectors who resell, So, how you can't control it, but in general, there are, as far as I know, in the region, there are not many, there are not as many dealers who actually collect as compared to maybe other parts of the world. Yeah.
And was your question also about skepticism? Was that a question or was that a comment? Oh, it's a comment. Yeah, we started with that, right?
Yeah.
It's a no-win situation. If a gallerist collector shows his collection, if it's too good, they will just say, oh yeah, he's keeping all the best for himself. If it's not good, then oh yeah, I think I'm big, the serious judgment problem. Yeah. So it's quite tricky. Questions? Any more? Yes. Oh, one last question. Yes.
Okay. So, Richard, you mentioned earlier about your Taipei show and that the sale was an iPad sale. So, where do you see this online gallery phenomenon moving, and what impact would it have on physical space, physical galleries?
I think that you still need a physical space, because that's where you experiment and do. We've always sell from the iPad in the fair because we can't bring everything and it's too costly. And the interesting thing about selling through the iPad or the computer is the person who's approaching us to look at the works, he or she has probably done their homework. You need to be a bit brave to buy from a screen. So yeah.
So you mean that person, before coming to you to buy from the iPad, must have done his or her own research already, right?
Must have. Because you won't turn up and just, swipe and buy. So it's quite different.
More informed?
Yeah.
Business more informed.
Your booth, it's also very kind of avant-garde because you present a curated booth based on
LGBTQ.
So it's kind of your first time in Taipei, it's the first art fair, and we come up with a fascist theme and presentation. So what were you thinking?
I wasn't thinking of anything.
You were having fun.
That's why I'm a bit reckless and a bit crazy.
But if there's any country or any city who would actually accept LGBT themed works, it would be, Taipei would be the most open, isn't it? They just staged a major show last time.
I wouldn't dare to do a show like that in KL.
Or Singapore? Would you do it for Singapore?
I would do it in Singapore, but without any tax.
No tax?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Iris, you have a question. Oh, okay. Any questions? No more questions?
Ask one quick one. Richard, thank you for showing us and sharing with us 33 paintings in your magnificent private collection. How many more do you have?
I don't have that.
Oh, that's very modest.
Less than 200.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, thank you,
Thank you.
Richard. Thank
Thank you very much, Patricia and Richard, for sharing your insights. So there's some refreshments at the back for you to enjoy. And if you'd like to know more about Richard's collection, there's a catalog that's available at the